Michael Burry, a man who was predicting hyperinflation not too long ago, has now turned a corner. In a recent tweet regarding the dangerous bullwhip effect, Burry is now predicting another financial problem. In today's video, we explore this wild supply chain phenomenon that may potentially wreak havoc on the US economy in a way that nobody sees coming. On June 28th, Burry tweeted the following with a link to an article called The Beer Game. While everyone is focused on inflation and rising costs, there is a hidden threat developing in the markets. This interesting theory speculates that due to certain supply chain phenomena, we may be seeing a tsunami wave of price drops in the near future. The idea goes something like this. We know from math and various other data points that complex systems produce non-linear phenomena. In simple terms, this means that when you disturb something extremely complex like a global supply chain, what you end up with is a ripple with massive waves. In Burry's tweet, he links to an article called The Beer Game, and The Beer Game is a project set up by an MIT professor to demonstrate the power of this bullwhip effect. Essentially, skipping over the details, this game replicates a three-stage supply chain for beer: brewery, distributor, and retailer. The point of the game is to try to forecast and adapt to changing conditions in the market, but as players quickly find out, this is easier said than done. Differing demand forecasts leads to excess production, impacting inventories, purchasing, and profits. So how does the beer game relate to what is happening right now? Well, as it turns out, during the pandemic, when we were all stuck at home and given free money in the mail, demand for a lot of items skyrocketed. Companies saw record numbers. There was a single event that completely changed the demand outlook for all companies. This created a lot of orders, which caused many supply chain managers to double and triple order to get ahead of this excessive demand and avoid shortages. Now, if you understand the bullwhip effect, each leg of the supply chain attempted to overcompensate for these changes. This magnified inventory levels exponentially, especially at the top of the supply chain at the manufacturing level. Fast forward 2 years and now we have this, a supply glut. Retailers all over the place are overstocked with millions of dollars of excess inventory. Everyone from Walmart, Target, Gap, and Macy's is reporting an oversupply of items that they're desperate to get rid of. This is the product of the bullwhip effect. Earlier in the month, we began to see companies directly acknowledge this problem, with Target CEO Brian Cornell stating that his company will take a hit to profits as it cancels orders and marks down unwanted merchandise. Now, while this is happening, many are wondering just how big of a problem this really is. Is it enough to reverse inflation and cause deflation, a scenario where prices come down? The last time we saw deflation in this country was back in 1954, and we haven't seen severe deflation since 1932. When this happens, the economy contracts and the governments panic. Deflation may sound like a good thing as your purchasing power increases and goods get cheaper, but it's also a signal that an impending recession and hard economic times are coming. When people feel prices are headed down, they actually delay purchases in hopes that they can buy things for less at a later date. But lower spending leads to less income for producers, which can lead to unemployment and higher interest rates. This negative feedback loop generates higher unemployment and even lower prices and even less spending. In short, deflation leads to more deflation, and the problem is so bad that the governments are willing to take extreme measures to control it. In the 1930s, as millions of Americans were quite literally starving, the US government destroyed crops and killed millions of farm animals in an attempt to drive down supply and maintain price levels. The question on everyone's mind is now shifting. Are we headed towards deflation in the near term? According to Cathie Wood, this seems like a very likely outcome. Take a listen to her explain.
One of the things that would be interesting to know is, have we ever seen inventories, Target or Walmart, have their inventories ever increased this much? So Target's inventories, their unit sales were probably down. 3.3% was the dollar value, but in units, probably down. And their inventories were up 42%. So take away inflation, that's 30 to 35% on a year-over-year basis. I do not believe we've ever seen that before. And these are well-managed companies. And so what I think happened was human beings overruled their enterprise resource planning systems, their software, and they did double order and triple order. I know that Target said part of the disappointment in sales and earnings was they had to start marking down goods in order to start clearing shelves. And even with marking down in April, these are through April, their inventories were up 42%. Walmart's were up 33%. Home Depot's up 32%. So much for supply chain problems. I mean, those at least in the case of those three companies, the supply chain issues are disappearing.
So if we've never seen these types of inventory surges before, we really don't know what will happen next. It's possible that the Fed is tightening into a failing economy that's already showing signs of a recession. The consumer savings rate is down, and we have these massive inventory surges all over the place. And now, using outdated data, many are saying Jerome Powell is way behind the curve, pushing up rates in an attempt to slow down the markets while the markets have already been slowed down. In fact, some experts are claiming that the economy is going to get so bad that the Federal Reserve will be forced to U-turn by the end of the year. Instead of raising rates, they will go back to cutting and reintroducing QE. This is why right now the markets seem to be in a continual slow downturn with small rallies in between. The uncertainty is very high. Nobody can truly predict what will happen next as there's so many variables at play. We know that everyone across the supply chain is going to get whipsawed with differing demand forecasts leading to excess production, impacting inventories, purchasing, profits, and deliveries. Now, with the Fed adding pressure to this environment, it could very well break something. And if you haven't figured it out by now, inflation isn't something really simple to understand or tame in the short term. There are those who believe that we could have a scenario where the Fed increases rates, consumer spending plummets, profits go down, and yet inflation remains high. Whatever the case may be, it seems that the effects of the pandemic are still to this day rippling through the markets, and it may take years before we go back to equilibrium. As always, thank you guys for watching, and please make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed it.